Real-time strategy? Check. Alternative history? Check. Dieselpunk and alternative science? Check. Tsarist Russia in turmoil? Check. Knock-off Kaiser Wilhelm? Check. Rasputin? Rasputin? This Thanksgiving festival is surely going to be accentuated with heavy metal music, for this is an iron harvest. Publisher Deep Silver and video game developer King Art have done something unusual. They have released a real-time strategy game, and everyone seems to be calling it the best strategy game in years. Well, it's the only big one in years, so competition is rare. Nonetheless, the game reminded me of an era when RTS games were on top of the world and not only brought to you multiplayer combat, but also thrilling single-player missions. If you follow this channel, it might be easy to miss that I am a huge fan of strategy games, because admittedly I rarely ever talk about them. And if you were to ask me which ones are my favorite, the list is going to consist of old games. StarCraft Brood War, Company of Heroes, Dawn of War, Earth 2150, Blitzkrieg Burning Horizon and Stronghold, to name a few. All old games. So it was indeed a refreshing experience to get my hands on a modern real-time strategy game that did not disappoint. Looking at you there, Dawn of War 3. Thanks for running the franchise totally into the ground. You suck. But now, Iron Harvest. Does it reinvent the wheel? No, on the contrary. It takes all the proven features from established RTS systems and applies them to their very unique setting. You have basic base building, research and upgradable buildings, units that gather experience and become more effective with each level. You have character units with special features, almost akin to stuff you would find in Dawn of War. Coming to think of it, King Arts must really enjoy all the stuff Relic Entertainment created. Iron Harvest comes with 3 factions: Prussia, Poland and the Russian Empire. Saxony, Polonia and the Rusviet. Yeah. These factions are an interesting, charming and sometimes silly accumulation of cultural observations and funny stereotypes. This all being aided with optional voice acting in native languages. Very nice.
A więc wolą żyć na kolanach? Wolność ma swoją cenę. Ich halte den Kopf unten.
Commander Günther von Duisburg. Exosuits called Eisenhans. Russians mixing the Tsar tank with a Katyusha rocket launcher and equipping mechs with giant sickles. 'Cause, you know, hammer and sickle. The Republic of Polonia fields the PZM-7 Śmiałe, the mech equivalent of cavalry, lightly armed and armored, but fast, and able to go into a bayonet charge akin to the lance attacks of the winged hussars. But oh, the Polish also lead actual cavalry into combat. The 3 factions of Iron Harvest are not as different as Terrans, Protoss and Zerg in StarCraft, or the plethora of different races in the Warhammer 40k universe. They are a bit more down to earth. The Polish, as you might have guessed from my previous descriptions, often rely on fast units, flanking maneuvers and hit-and-run tactics. The 2 big empires of Saxony and Rusviet are slow and more lumbering behemoths, with the Rusviet relying on a lot of close combat vehicles, equipping mechs with the previously mentioned giant sickles, and the Saxonians, well, what are the Germans famous for? Building ridiculously large guns. So if you like to shoot a lot and engage the enemies from a distance, then the Saxonians are your horse to bet on. Each faction has special commanders with unique abilities. Polonia has snipers and cavalry. The Russians field interesting high-tech exosuits that you will get a close look of in the campaign, and the Saxonians, well, apart from Günther von Duisburg and Prince Wilhelm himself, they got the dieselpunk all-terrain attack transporter. Or at least it looks like an AT-AT. In multiplayer matches, your special character is not on the battlefield from the very beginning. They are called in via a reserve which is chosen before the battle starts. The reserve is separated into 2 tiers, a stronger and a weaker one. These reserves are then called onto the battlefield by clicking onto the HQ and paying for them with resources. Like I said a minute ago, the game is heavily inspired by Company of Heroes and does not reinvent the genre. All units work with an easy-to-comprehend system. Machine gunners and flamethrowers are great against infantry, but bad against tanks. Flamethrowers are great against bunkers as well, the machine gunners not so much. Regular infantry can take on other infantry effectively, and if equipped with hand grenades, even bigger enemies. When fighting from cover, combat value increases massively, as they are harder to kill. But if the enemy brings in heavy armor, they pulverize your cover. And pulverizing cover is a great feature in Iron Harvest, because those gigantic mechs will flatten everything in their way. So be sure to use mines and position your anti-mech guns well. You get where this is going. Every unit has its counterpart. Interesting though that units are incredibly flexible. You can let your infantry man abandoned weapons and pick up equipment. This way, a cheap team of engineers is quickly changed into an expensive team of anti-armor gunners or a mortar team. And don't worry about your heavy ordnance, let them fire relentlessly into the heart of the action, because friendly fire is not a thing in this game. Comparing this game to its bigger brothers of Company of Heroes and the likes, it's a lot more straightforward. Base building is minimal. There are 3 main buildings and the rest is focused on defensive structures. Giant bases akin to Dawn of War or Supreme Commander do not exist. The scale of these battles is smaller and more fast-paced. And as much as I love Iron Harvest, it is not without its flaws. The units exhibit strange behavior from time to time, like taking cover behind the same wall as the enemy. But the cover system has improved with every update, so I am willing to give him a chance there. Probably the most annoying thing to me is that some units have a very limited range. When railway guns can only fire a bit further than your infantry, then something is a bit off. It's probably great for balancing, but it feels a bit off to me. Visually, the game is stuck in 2012. The amount of detail is not as high as one could expect in 2020. Then, on the other hand, this means the game runs on a baked potato. I tested it on a 2013 Dell Inspiron 17R, with all settings to the max. It runs fine. Lowering the settings a bit even gives you a stable frame rate when the action is totally escalating. Let me say a few words about the art style and then about the campaign. Not too much though, I don't want to spoil anything. The entire idea of the so-called 1920-plus universe is the invention of the Polish artist Jakub Różalski. His artworks provided the basis for the entire game. To me it seems that in his earlier works he was more adhering to what really existed. For example, here we see basically a walking Sturmpanzerwagen A7V, and here in the background we see something that resembles the Tsar tank much more closely than the rocket launcher thing that we see in the final game. His newer work has a more refined style and relies less on things that really existed. These are the artworks that we mostly see in the game, which is now the segue to the single-player campaign, because the motifs of his artwork have been faithfully recreated in model and level design. The campaign is segmented into 3 different chapters that seamlessly flow into one another and cover each faction. All the while telling an engaging story, the campaign also familiarizes you with all the different units and prepares you well for the multiplayer. Veterans as well as newcomers are being welcomed with open arms, with deer hunting and a snowball fight, just before all hell breaks loose. And you are going to meet all the various characters, some people you have even known from your history lessons. It's a wild one. If you can wrap your head around alternative history, then this game is this is a riot. There are certain situations in the campaign that are definitely emotional heavy hitters, because you get attached to characters and they go through dramatic changes, let's say it that way. And then there are situations where you just empathize with the characters and the country, the cause you're fighting for so much that you suddenly feel patriotism for a fictional country in a video game that is of course based on a real country and a real struggle.
Отступаем!
And then the Winter's House arrived. Jeszcze Polska nie umarła. Quick addendum. Yes, I know, that's not the current version of the Polish national anthem. That's an older version. But hey, this game is alternative history, isn't it? That's all I want to say. Otherwise, too much would be spoiled. So, to sum this up, Iron Harvest is a modern RTS game that comes with various single and multiplayer types. From a full campaign to ranked matchmaking, a lot is included. This game gets a recommendation from my side. If you've never played an RTS game, this is a great point to start. And if you're a fan of older RTS games, then this might be right up your alley as well. With the current asking price of $50 or euros, the game is reasonably priced. It is of course not the cheapest game out there, but for the amount of content delivered and considering that there's more content on the way for free, the price is fine. However, you will get the game cheaper in the key store. I have seen it for around 35 euros, so you can get it in a big discount. And now, in the name of the Kaiser, I can tell you His Majesty fully endorses this game. And it has been suggested by intelligence reports that the government of the Republic of Polonia and the Tsar of the Rosviet also endorse this game. Suppose it's a pretty good game if we can all agree. I really hope this game will get add-ons or a sequel, for the simple reason that there is not only great potential for future improvement, there is also a whole world of lore around it. Seeing Japanese or British mechs? I would be down for that. I am curious to hear your opinions. As always, I am happy to personally respond. At this point, a special thanks to our Patreon supporters who got to see this video first. And if you enjoyed this review, I want to invite you to give it a like, subscribe for future content, and maybe even support us on Patreon and join the ranks of our loyal supporters. So, see you guys next time. Until then, have a nice day and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.